to the Postmodern Art Podcast, the podcast dedicated to giving artists who are wandering the world over the platform they deserve. I'm your host, Nathan Ragland, and for today's episode, as we wind down towards the tail end of Pride Month 2024, well, let me give y'all one last good laugh before the month is over. Today's guest is Dian Cathal, a stand-up comedian from New York based in the UK with amazing stories and some sensational scenarios for you to listen to. Dian is someone that I became aware about because of a fantastic bit that we will definitely be talking about later on in the podcast. But ever since then, I have been seeing a lot of his bits and such, and I knew I had to have him on the podcast with how amazing of a storyteller he is, more than anything else. If you enjoy Dian, please make sure you support him with the links down in the description below. If you enjoyed the podcast, make sure you like, share, subscribe, or follow whatever audio streaming platform you prefer. Leave 5 stars wherever you can. I see that stuff and it genuinely warms my heart. If you want to go a little further with that support, may I recommend checking out the merch shop at fourthwall.com with that link in the description below. We have some sensational streetwear done by some fantastic artists that you would look fantastic in today. And look, if all you're looking for is a nice, cool, casual place to where you can relax, get to meet some of the other artists, and really get to grow as a community, may I recommend you check out our Discord server, the Artist Sanctuary. The group we've already accumulated there is an absolutely sensational group, and I think you would be a fantastic addition to that today. But now, without further ado, please enjoy the Postmodern Art Podcast. Thank you, despite all the chaos, thank you so much for taking the time to be here, sincerely.
No problem at all.
Ah, goodness. I love how I see the little Ash Ketchum costume in the background. That's a nice little touch right there.
Yes, my costume rack for all my tax-deductible clothes.
There you go. I love that mentality. It's awesome that we're finally getting the chance to do this. I know I've obviously seen the JK Rowling bit like ages ago whenever that was going viral or whatnot, but it's been good to keep up with you ever since. So I'm excited to do this conversation.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah,
that was a crazy weekend when that popped off.
Oh, I can only imagine, and I know we're definitely going to talk more about that in the actual podcast itself, but I can only imagine how insane it was for that shit to just really pop off. Really develop almost like a life of its own. That's obviously got to be one of the scary things of going viral.
Yeah, well, it wasn't too viral, but I put it on TikTok.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was sort of my first video on TikTok, and I was like so impressed. I was like, oh my god, 30,000 people saw it. And then I put it on Twitter. It was immediately off the charts. I was at like a family pool party, being the worst person, just checking my phone every minute and yelling out the numbers. And my family was happy for me, but I was the loser going, oh my god, 100,000, 250,000, like just calling out milestones.
Hey, you know what? That's something to be proud of, especially for something you put a lot of time and effort into.
Well, I think the dopamine will last for about 24 hours.
That's valid.
And then it just kills your phone battery.
And
then you're just like, I can't look at the notifications. There's too many.
I imagine after a while, it's like, goodness, there's just so many notifications. And then there's the thought of, oh God, I gotta keep people entertained somehow. I got them here.
Like I then afterwards, when I was then, so annoyingly, I didn't have any like shows to promote.
Okay.
So this was in like September. It was like the first weekend of September that popped off. And then come April, I was filming a special. Mm-hmm. So I was like, I got all these new followers. They'll all come. And then it became so clear how those views do not translate into fame. Like, other people came, but people from Twitter did not come.
That sucks. I can only imagine how. Yeah.
Well, I think also because I'm American, so I live in the UK, yep. But all the algorithms throw my stuff to America, mm-hmm. which is useless to me. I have people being like, if you're in Alaska, let me know. And I'm like, do you want to fly me to Alaska? I'm not coming just for you.
Exactly. If you're ever in Alaska, let me know. That's nice. Let me see when in the never I'll be there.
I'd happily go to Alaska if someone pays me.
Right.
But I don't know like a transgender comedy hour in Alaska will go over that well.
Yeah, you have a. It's an interesting point that I don't think I've ever really thought about.
I'll
Maybe.
go. If someone
Uh,
pays for me to go, I'll go.
I'll say maybe we just need to wait for like next Pride Month. Someone from Alaska will hear this little bit right here and just be like, "Okay, let's get this thing going. Let's do it."
Well, it happens because I have two friends who you may have heard of because a bunch of people wrote about it. The musical version of the Gwyneth Paltrow trial, the
Oh,
ski trial. So they it's a play with music. It's not a musical, but it is a
right.
musical. They got paid to go do the show at the ski resort in Utah. So
What?
these two, the twinkiest twinks you've ever met, doing the campus gayest show, and it was just because I think it was the editor of the local queer news, who's also a millionaire, paid for everything, and then there were visa problems because they're British, trying
Okay.
to go to Utah to do a gay play, and then they had to get a letter from Mitt Romney, and they
What?
like couldn't tell him. Yeah, so they didn't mention how gay it was, but they were just like, it's great for the economy of Utah because we've already sold out 2 weeks of performances. So Utah will lose money if we don't do our gay play. And then they got to do it. It's called
That
Gwyneth Goes Skiing. If you have a chance, go see it. It's great.
that is insane. I definitely gotta look that shit up afterwards. I okay.
Yeah, I almost had to get because my family, like I did summer vacations at the Pentagon, so I was like being tapped to like get a letter of recommendation from them, and I was like, I know a guy. I don't know if he'd write a letter in support of a gay play that I'm not in, but yeah, I can ask.
I learned something. I learn a lot of things every day, but this is.
Yeah.
Oh man, this makes me excited for the rest of the conversation we're about to have. Um,
Yep.
I'm going to ask this now, and because I feel embarrassed to have to ask this. How do you pronounce your name?
So it's Dian like Ian with a
Okay.
D.
Okay.
And then it depends where you're from how to say the second name. So it's a very Irish name. So the Irish way is Cathal. The British will call me Cathal, and the Americans will call me Cathal.
Okay. Which
So
which would you prefer?
depends how. I think go for the Irish one if you really want to be daring.
Okay.
But if you get it wrong, no one will hunt you down.
It's fine. Would be the first time I had some sort of a warrant against me. Anyways, so it's Dian Carl
Cathal, so like a soft H.
Cahill or Cal.
Yeah.
Okay. Dian Cal.
It's the old version of the Irish name Cahill.
Okay.
It's the very old version of that name.
Okay. This will be. Hopefully, it wouldn't. Again, it wouldn't be the first time I butchered someone's name on the podcast.
Yeah, that's right.
But I at least wanted to ask you how you want it to be pronounced. That
Yeah.
this is as much your episode as it is my show.
Oh, thank you.
All right, Dean. Before we really get going, I must ask the icebreaker question of the podcast, if I may. Let's say you get to go to a desert
Uh-huh.
island on your own accords, different than the island you're currently living on. But you get to go to a desert island on your own accords. It's just you alone with your thoughts. You get to kick back, relax, breathe, get to truly enjoy yourself for a little bit. With accommodations, you're not stranded on islands like a little personal island paradise B&B away from society for a little bit. To help make
Mhm.
sure you don't go completely insane on this island, you can bring one piece of media or one piece of art with you to help with whatever kind of headspace you want on this island. If given this opportunity, what would that one piece be?
Oh, interesting. Oh, do I do quality or quantity? Okay. Um, one piece of media.
I mean, if it helps,
I feel like
I'll say if it helps, TV, film, video game, whatever you consider art or media, it's all within the realm of possibilities.
I know but I love a video essay. But would it
Okay.
be like a waste of my island time to spend, 8 hours watching a video about something I didn't know about before that video? Um.
you're on this island as long as you want to. So
Oh, okay. Okay, we're just hanging out then.
yeah,
Um. I think I'd actually bring just like a funky towel,
a,
just a fun towel.
a fun
Like I think
towel.
get away from yeah, like the towel is the art.
Okay, okay.
You know what I mean? Like like I might just have like one of the toddlers in my family tie dye a towel, and that might be enough.
I
That
think
might be the only art I need.
I think that's the most unique answer I've probably heard on this podcast, aside from a nuke. That's a whole different thing. Um,
Oh my god, that's an art of sort. Yeah.
yeah, that's the art of war, if you may. Uh,
Hmm.
is there any particular reason why a funky towel is like the thing that comes to your mind? Like, why is that the thing that will entertain you for this entire stay that you want on this island?
I think it's just like I am way too attached, and I know that about myself.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, if I'm on this deserted island and I'm by myself and it's just me time, I think just like a little piece of like mundane art, like useful art,
Okay.
is nice.
Okay. Okay. You know what?
Yeah, like just on the sand
Honestly, yeah. No, I get where you're coming
is a
from.
useful item. Towel.
It really, yeah, especially on a place like that. You know, that makes sense. But if that's the case, a funky towel. That is your answer. You're locking that in.
I'm locking that in.
Then, if that's the case, I cannot think of a better way to start the Postmodern Art Podcast. Welcome, everyone. I am your host, Nathan
Yeah.
Ragland. Feel free to like, share, subscribe, or follow whatever audio streaming platform you prefer. You would look fantastic in the merch that we have at the merch shop. Go to fourthwall.com or check the link in the description below. And follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, and TikTok at PostmodArtPod for future updates and guest announcements, including today's guest. He is a stand-up comedian from New York, based in the UK, with amazing stories, sinister scenarios, and doing what every trans person should do, putting JK Rowling in their place. Welcome to the podcast, Dian Cathal!
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to be here. Like I said before, it's really an honor to get a chance to talk to you. Ever since I've gotten the chance to be exposed to your stuff in the viral way, and even then doing some deep dives afterwards. Like I genuinely, it's really an honor to have you here and to talk about some of that incredible stuff. But before we talk about the stuff you're doing nowadays, I want to go back just a little bit and learn more or less the origin story of Dian. What got you interested in art, or at the very least, what got you interested in comedy in the first place?
I think it's a weird thing that I've been thinking about a lot because of a new show I'm developing.
Okay.
Or I think I was always going to be an artist.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think being like an artist is a choice anyone makes. I think it's a curse bestowed upon your soul. Um, and I've always said like when it comes to like application that I'm a storyteller and I don't care what medium I have to use to tell those stories.
Okay.
And I think when it comes to things like comedy, it's just the easiest to put up. Like they're like even hour-long comedy shows you can do for no money
Yeah, true.
if you're willing to not pay yourself.
That is honestly very true. What is it about what is it about storytelling that you feel more or less like the most comfortable with? Like what did you realize that you wanted to be more or less a storyteller in one way or another?
Oh, it's a very dark story. I think I always was going to be an artist, but I think there is a moment when you step on a stage and like you see it when you see like kids go up for the first time. You know the ones who are going to live there because their eyes just change. And my story actually has to do with 9/11.
Oh wow. Okay. Okay. We're starting off strong with this one. Okay.
Yeah, so my comedian origin story is actually 9/11, which is messed up, and I don't like that that's my origin story, but it is. So basically, I lived in a commuter town outside New York City, so we were really affected by 9/11
Right.
in that a bunch of people from my town died, and like when they were evacuating our school, like our parents couldn't come get us because they were all working in the city and they closed all the bridges. So it was a very chaotic day in our town.
Right.
And then a year later, we had a memorial assembly where we had like actual first responders from that day there. And like we read the names of everyone who had died in our town. And I was 7 and I was chosen to sing the solo for God Bless the USA. And not because I could sing well, but because I could read. And if you know God Bless the USA, the middle bit is just a list of states and cities.
Yeah,
So they needed a child.
They need a child who could read.
Who could read and not mess it up and like defame the school. So I was picked because I was a strong reader and could hold a tune. And I was so nervous that I had my head, I stared at the page the whole song. But when I looked up after I'd finished, I saw an auditorium of adults crying.
Oh.
And as an adult, I understand why they were crying, but as a 7-year-old, all I felt was the unimaginable rush of, wow, my singing reduced a room to tears. My art has moved 300 people. And I've been chasing that feeling ever since.
I love the bliss of a child because, again, like you said, as an adult, you understand why they're crying. But as a kid, you're like, they love me. They really, really love me.
I was like, wow, I am a god. I think that's especially with actors and comedians. There is like a search of a godly power. You feel very superior on that stage when it's going well.
Fair enough. So I understand where I guess the rush of being on stage comes from. So like, when did you realize that comedy was a thing that you can more or less like put yourself into? Like, when did comedy become more or less a part of your life?
So, I was 19 years old going to the University of the Arts in Philadelphia, which just recently went bankrupt.
Yep.
And didn't tell anyone they were going bankrupt, and that's a whole story you can Google.
Yes.
But when I was going there when it was still open, I actually went to an anime convention in Pennsylvania where there were some comedians doing nerd comedy.
Okay.
I was like, oh my God, I could do that. So I literally went up all bright-eyed. They were very drunk. It then transpired. Gotten wasted and then did this show. But they were so sweet, especially a guy named Noah. And I went up and I just said, I want to be you when I grow up. Bearing in mind I'm a 19-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
And he went, well, I run a night. You should come. And because I was under 21, I couldn't go into clubs. So, like, you see, like, viral videos of, like, 14-year-olds in clubs. It's because they've been escorted by a parent.
Okay.
So, I could go to one club, living in Philadelphia, and every Wednesday night, I would take the train across the river to Jersey, and then I would literally walk 1.5 miles to a place called the Tap Room, and I would do 5 minutes, and then I would walk back and then go to class in the morning. So I'd get home at like 1:30 and then get up at 8 a.m. for like a movement class.
I admire your dedication more than anything else.
Yeah, and like I was the youngest one by at least 5 years. Like everyone was like a proper adult in their at least late 20s.
Okay. Was that more like being able to do that stage, I guess, more or less? Was that more or less the moment it went from just like a passing interest and a love that you had to a passion and wanting to make it your career?
Yeah, I think it was, like I said, I was always going to be performing, and it felt just like adding another like string to the bow.
Mm-hmm.
And then, especially once I moved to the UK, it quickly became, oh, I can get paid more regularly to do this.
I imagine so, especially in the UK.
Yeah, well, it's just I mean, you don't get paid necessarily well, but you can do weekend and do 4 shows, and you get like $50 each, which isn't a bad, and that's like enough money to live on for a week.
Yeah, valid. I mean, regardless, like,
rather than like waiting for the big payday of like a film, or like a commercial.
Right, right. Oh yeah, no, trust me.
You get those 10 grand.
I was gonna say I know that with my, because I went to school for filmmaking and such, so like I know that more or less, like I guess the starving artist mentality being in film compared to, I guess, like what you're talking about, like the stand-up comedian. Like, yeah, you know, you're able to do a couple shows. It doesn't pay well, but it pays immediately, and you're able to get by.
Yeah, like you get cash on the door. You get hand because like, and it then becomes a weird tax thing, but and a lot of people don't report it, especially when they have a day job. Like the amount of people who won't report it as income because there's this
Oh,
mentality of like, if I'm not on television doing comedy, I've not, like, this isn't real income.
okay,
If you
interesting.
do that enough, it becomes enough income to be taxed.
That is that is interesting to hear, regardless. And I hope the government is not listening in. Hi, how's it going, random CIA agent? Well, I'm in
I pay
America.
my taxes.
All
I said some people.
right, that's what I'm saying. Some people, um, some people. I get it. Hint, hint, wink, wink. Anyways, um, no, I mean that's awesome to hear. And honestly, I'll just go ahead and jump to this question. I imagine. Well, let me start by going back to, yeah. Wow, words. Uh, like it's awesome to hear that obviously stand up has gotten you to this point to where you're in a completely different country doing it for a living more than anything else. Like, when did you decide? Like, when did you realize the UK was a possibility, and when did you decide to make that jump to be over there to pursue this, you know, comedy career?
Oh no, that's misconception. I don't choose to be here.
Oh, you don't choose to
It's a
be here.
long story. But I'm living in exile because basically I have this rare autoimmune disease that is triggered by corn. And as an American, you well know that
Yeah.
corn and corn syrup and cornstarch is in everything in America. So I
Mm.
literally cannot live there without being on high dose immunosuppressants. So rather than not have an immune system, I live in the UK. And that is the
Uh,
singular reason I do.
I okay. I know I'd seen something about being allergic to corn somewhere, but hearing that now, I think that is the most unique reason for someone to be in the UK of all reasons. But I understand. I
Yeah, no, it is the biggest joke that I moved to the UK for their food.
yeah, it's I don't know. I guess the joke there would be like it's so bland and boring, but at least it's not corn.
Hmm. Oh yeah.
I I'm almost feel kind of sorry to hear that, but again, like seeing how well you're thriving in that atmosphere, yeah, I think you're making the best out of a bad situation. You know?
Yeah, that's really, listen, I would be happy to do this in the States.
Yeah.
I'm just not allowed.
You're not allowed, not because of any sort of other circumstance with you, but because it could literally kill you.
Exactly.
See, whenever you said exile, for some reason, like my first thought is the fact that you're transgender. I'm like, oh my god, were you hated that much just because you decided to transition? Like, I know it's
Oh no,
Pride
the
Month and
UK is
everything.
worse.
Oh, the UK is worse. Oh man, I'm sorry.
Oh, I promise you the UK is worse for trans people. It's awful here.
I'm already feeling bad for you. Like, but now that I mentioned that, it kind of leads to another question. Like, did like as a trans person, like, does stand up comedy help you? Like, does yeah, does stand up comedy more or less like help you more or less like express yourself when it comes to being a trans person?
Yeah, I think trans jokes are absolutely hilarious. And I'm actually really happy that there are more non-trans people doing really good trans jokes.
Mm-hmm.
Because the whole concept of being trans, while to many is very traumatizing, is also absolutely hilarious. Like, for instance, my family has a long history of breast cancer, and I've personally had 3 breast cancer scares since COVID started.
Oh wow.
But as a trans guy, that's fucking hilarious.
I mean, yeah, because if nothing else, it'd be like, well, it kind of speeds up the process of getting that top surgery I was looking for.
Well, it's just a mutual breakup now. Like, they don't want to be here either.
Exactly. There you go. Goodness, like it. hearing shit like that, and obviously hearing the stories you've already told so much, it makes me wonder like how your mind more or less like processes the real life stuff and be able to translate it to a story that you tell on stage. Like, what's more or less like the process for you to like developing a bit for the stage?
Well, I think comedians especially are very sick people. Like I do have a theory, like we do all have depression. Um and I think what happens is we as kids and young people seek out comedy because like laughter is the best medicine. And then at a certain point we have to start self-medicating. Like at a certain point we've watched all the comedy
Mm-hmm.
and we need to start making jokes to keep our supply running.
I
And yeah, it is a I feel so bad, but it is a type of sickness. Like the bit what you hear from a comedian is maybe 10% of the thoughts that they've had. And I think people are sometimes amazed by it. People are sometimes like, I can't imagine like having a brain that does that. I'm like, I know. We have with it though.
yeah, you know that hearing that makes me it makes me realize, man, that's why my dad's probably one of the funniest people I know. It's because he's depressed as fuck.
Yeah. I think there's some of it is like a generous community thing, which is like I needed someone to make me laugh and now I want to make those people laugh. Like I don't need happy people coming to my shows. I'd rather have the depressed people to get more out of it. Like I do a lot of jokes about like my dead dad, and it is genuinely the best moment because the people who will laugh most at those jokes are people with dead dads,
You know what? That
and
makes
everyone else
sense.
will be uncomfortable.
Everyone else would just be uncomfortable. Like, well, we still have our dads. Well, that's good for you. Um,
Yeah, good for you. That's we paid a price, and this is our consolation prize.
there
We need
you
to
go.
laugh harder.
We get to laugh hard.
Like I've gotten I've been building up my TikTok and I've gotten messages from people. One person in particular was like, "My dad died 2 days ago, and I found your jokes. Thank you. Like it's really helping me with the grieving process."
That
And I'm like, I'm like, that's so fucked up. But yeah, that's why I do it.
that is both the most messed up and both the sweetest thing I have heard. Like, thank goodness your jokes about your dead dad is helping me cope with my dad just dying. Oh goodness! Like it also leads me to like wonder like what are some of the like you talk about basically sharing a room with like similar comedians or whatnot, like you guys all have the same sense of humor. So what are some of the comedians that more or less like inspire you, or some of the comedians that you more or less like relate with?
Um, I think whenever I get asked this question, it really might like because a day depends on like seems like the flavor of the month. It's who I just like come across and really enjoyed.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't understate the foundational effect Jon Stewart had on me.
Yes.
Because like the Daily Show's run was my childhood. I was born in 1995. It started in like 1998, 1999, and like changed what comedy could be. Because obviously Jon Stewart wasn't the first like political comedian,
Right.
but he did like rock the world in a way. Like he rocked late night television. He made being a political comedian cool
Yeah.
and like really solidified in my mind like you have to have a reason to be telling a joke.
I mean that I like because I'll say I'm also a kid from the '90s, where I was born in '96, and like I grew up like watching some of the very similar stuff. Like I used to be a huge fan of watching obviously the late show or the night the Daily Show with Jon Stewart. Some like especially like towards like more or less the later end of his run, and like yeah, just
Mhm.
kind of that like the way that he more or less like makes that kind of stuff funny, but also like treats it as seriously as it needs to be as well, like making it mean something. Like you said, it's definitely a thing that I can understand for you, like kind of changing that brain chemistry and making it more or less like uh uh what's what I'm looking for, like a serious thing for you, or more or less like the a good foundation for what you're talking about.
Yeah, I think working comedians, I think people misunderstand how seriously we take our job.
Mm,
Because like the whole art of it, the whole craft is A, making it seem like we didn't write these jokes, we're just sort of musing on stage. Meanwhile, every bit has been crafted over months, even years,
yep.
to be it's perfect. Like I remember when I was doing my first hour, I'd have my script, which for an hour was like 16 pages single space, and I'd be editing it like in person because I prefer to print it out and then edit it and then redraft it like 3 weeks later. But
Okay.
I had scrawls all over the pages, and people didn't understand what it was because I was like, they're like, what is that? I'm like, oh, it's the script for my stand-up special. And every time they'd go, oh yeah, I guess you do have to write that down.
It's like it wouldn't hurt at the very least, because like there's only so much your brain will allow you to talk, or allow you to say. You kind of really need something to reference. Be like, okay, how do I get to this point, or how do I
Yeah.
transition into this? I was gonna say like hell, it's gotten to me for a point to where like I at least have like my questions or like my points. It's kind of hard to see because there you go. I have like my points
Yeah.
written down for what I want to talk about with the podcast. Although I go loosely based off of that, but I understand that like for you, I can understand that for you, like you have a certain way you want to say it. You have a certain way that you want it to flow. So like having that full script and then editing it, and obviously more than anything else, is how the crowd's gonna react to it. Depends. I imagine for you, how the crowd's gonna react depends on how you want to like perform a certain bit.
Yeah, well, I think it's so funny because like even with crowd work, which is really what's has ruined comedy, and it's what goes viral is
Yeah.
people doing crowd work and like crowd work quote unquote going wrong. Comedians have in the barrel responses to whatever you're gonna say when they ask you a question. Like some comedians are honest, which is like they'll ask you like, "What do you do for work?" And it's not because they care; it's because they have a bit that they need to set up,
Mm-hmm.
and you can give them almost any answer and they'll work it into now I can go into my bit. You're just helping them get into an already planned situation. But it's meant to make it seem like, oh, it's off the cuff. Oh, now that you've said that, I've just thought of this very funny thing. No, that was planned the whole time. It's a ruse.
I, it's almost as if people that need to perform need to have some sort of ready set response for whatever you say, no matter what it's going to be. Huh? I wouldn't know what that's like. Anywho, no.
No, it's funny. The creepiest thing to watch is a group of comedians working through bits, like just like at a table. Because
Oh,
nobody's laughing. Everybody has the most serious game face on, and they won't even like look at the person speaking. They're listening for the craft of it. They're listening for like some people call it like the shiny thing, which is like what's the actual like core of it, what's the interesting thing about what or the bit you're trying to work out. Nobody laughs. They'll nod your head or smile if it's hilarious. But because we're not like in a mood, it's just like in a very different gear. Because like you go to
right.
a comedy show, ideally as an audience member, you're open to just like whatever comes at you. But if you're a comedian in a working mood, you're analytical. You're thinking about all the rules of comedy that you know, and you're not gonna laugh. And it's yeah, I think people don't understand that bit of it.
I mean, hearing you talk about it kind of makes sense. It's like you were saying, like for the actual like audience member, like themselves, it's like they're there for a good time. For you guys at that table, like you're trying to make sure you can earn that paycheck one way or another, you know?
Yeah, rent is due.
Yeah, rent is due, and it's like the I'm sorry, it's like those like posts that go viral and whatnot. Like, was a person that knew their rent was due, and they're belting out like the most incredible like song or doing the most incredible performance of all
Yeah.
time. Like, you guys are looking for that moment. I imagine for you, one of the big moments that more or less paid at least a little bit of rent money was this one bit that went extremely viral for you, and that is you doing, like I said, what every trans person should do: dunking on JK Rowling. Now, I'm genuinely curious. How did this? I imagine you being a trans person, it was more or less natural. But how did this bit more or less come to you? Like, how did you develop this bit into the beautiful viral hit that we all saw?
So basically, what happened was that's a bit from my hour called Generation Y,
Mm-hmm.
a Pokemon ruined a generation. I was just thinking about sort of musing about millennials and like what we care about and why we're a broken generation.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them is because Harry Potter was so fundamental in both the best and worst parts of our generation.
Yep.
Um, and then obviously JK Rowling's incredibly strange turn where into not caring about being an artist anymore, like spending all her days on Twitter of all places,
Yep.
um, going after trans people. And I think because I think it was a genuinely like a hurtful thing to our generation. So many people's identities were wrapped up in Harry Potter.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can't really throw stones. I was a Glee kid, but like at least Glee got so bad, you sort of go like, okay, I can't. This can't be a part of my soul anymore.
Right. Right.
But there are people who got tattoos of the Deathly Hallows. There were people who got like the wizard Nazi tattoos, which I'll never understand.
Yeah,
Like the Death Eater.
I guess they just thought the design looked cool, but even then, like the concept behind, yeah, no.
I'm like, why would you get like the wizard supremacist tattoo? Like, get any other one. Get the lightning bolt on your forehead before you do that.
It's like you might as well go ahead and put the Confederate flag right above that if you're gonna go with that mentality, you know?
Yeah. So I think. And listen, people love what they love, especially in a world as horrible as ours. Find joy where you can. Um, but it was so wrapped up in people's identities. It was a part of my personal life because I like learned how to read with those books. Like I have very fond memories of my father, who again is now dead, coming home from like a 12-hour shift in construction,
Mm-hmm.
getting the Harry Potter book and teaching me to read. And like he'd do this thing where he'd read a chapter and then I'd say I want more. He went, okay, then you read it. And he'd like make me try to read it. And then he'd help me. Like he wasn't a monster. He wouldn't just let me struggle.
Right.
But it's how I learned how to read.
And now that
So then to have her turn against my community in such a weird descent into radicalization, I think because it's so ridiculous.
yes.
Like the bit came to me because I'm like, you wrote about wizards and shit where literally there's a polyjuice potion where you change sex.
Yeah.
Like not even gender. Your DNA changes.
It's like your DNA changes, like not just gender, but like also with the situation of Hermione or whatnot. Like fucking, you're making furries at this point. Like, how are you complaining about this bullshit?
They are a furry. There's like a whole thing with the wizards who like the animagus or whatever, where like you got to keep a leaf under your tongue for a month, like a very drawn out magical process to become an animal whenever you want, and you just have like 4 teenage boys do that, and that's just a main part of the plot. Is this friend group turns into animals all the damn time?
Yeah. And so like
one's a rat for like 30 years, like.
Which, like, I'm so glad that like you took the ridiculousness of Harry Potter and just basically turned it back on JK Rowling with how ridiculous her statements were, because it's so simple, but yet it's so genius, like how you're able to make that connection.
Yeah, like there's so much in that series about like the classic one of like it doesn't matter what someone's born as, it's what they become. There's this weird thing with like Harry's soul being merged with a demon, and that's why he was quote unquote going to be a Slytherin, but he had the choice of no, I identify as a Gryffindor, not knowing what a fucking Gryffindor was.
Right. But are we sure that
like,
11 years
even,
old?
like, told him,
Are we sure that 11 years old?
he didn't even
Someone's.
know Slytherins were Nazis. He was just like, I'm not feeling snakes.
I'm not feeling snakes. But again, are we sure that 11-year-old is mature enough to make that kind of decision?
I don't know, man. He made a lot of like life altering decisions as a young person.
He really
literally
did.
was That's what was crazy, is because people, obviously I got a lot of hate for it eventually. Like the transphobes found it and were appalled. But they were like, well, being a Gryffindor didn't make him mutilate his body. And I'm like, he literally was killed in a Christ-like fashion.
Yeah.
In like the last movie, he's sacrificed like Jesus Christ and rises from the dead.
Yeah. Again, yeah.
Like he
Goodness.
has like part of his soul ripped out when like Voldemort's brought back. He gets cut with a knife, and like this poor boy is so traumatized.
It's,
Um,
it's like this boy didn't mutilate his body in order to become this thing, and you're just like, have you not watched the same thing I've watched?
yeah, he literally has a scar for life on his face. They take his blood to make the weird Voldemort baby thing. He's like permanently damaged for life psychologically.
Yeah, no shit. More than anything else, I'm
So
curious.
he's so damaged. He names a child Albus Cerberus. Like that's the real name.
Yeah, goodness. I imagine that kid got bullied. Any. I know you said the transphobe eventually got wind of it or whatnot. Do you know if JK Rowling ever caught wind of this bit?
Not that I saw.
Can
Not
you?
that she didn't send it. She didn't send the troops after me, as far as I know.
I would say, can you imagine if she did though, or at least if she finally caught wind of this bit, like the hell on earth that could potentially rain down from it?
Oh yeah. I mean, I would have just had to mute it all,
That-
but maybe I would have got in like the Telegraph. Maybe I would have gotten in the papers.
Yeah, yeah, that's a valid point. I mean, regardless, I know we were kind of talking in like the little intro bit of like how viral, how insane it was for you to see like the numbers grow and whatnot. But I can only imagine how insane it was for you, especially afterwards, for like people to see this bit and to like more or less discover you in one way or another.
Well, I didn't make any money from it, but I did learn a lot about sort of making content online. And biggest takeaway is engagement's engagement. It doesn't matter if it's hate content or love. Like a retweet's a retweet, a quote tweet's a quote tweet. They weren't like liking it, but if they want to comment hate, the algorithm doesn't care if it's hate.
Yeah, as long as it gets you views at the end of the day, I guess. So it is take as you will. Um,
Yeah, a ratio tweet goes just as viral as one that's not.
you know what? Valid, understandable. I I imagine like as cool as that bit must have been. Like I'm curious like because you got a lot of good bits aside from that one. I know that's the one that a lot of people recognize you from. But like I said, I've been paying attention to your TikTok ever since that post went viral, whatnot. I absolutely love just some of the stories and some of the bits that you have. Do you have a personal favorite like bit that you've been able to tell? That you've like crafted for a while, then like you being able to tell it, and like the audience reaction was honestly what you had hoped for.
Yeah, so I have a bit based. So it was about like dating shows. So part of
Yes.
Generation Y is like our generation's damaged. Like we don't know how to feel love anymore or find love anymore. Like we're like the loneliest generation. Generation Alpha is not far behind us, but Gen Z, we're all like very lonely. We don't know how to date properly, and part of that is because of all the dating reality shows we've seen,
Mm-hmm.
which don't emulate love. Um, so I had this idea for a dating basically I'm like, dating shows are so crazy and
Yes.
they're just for like watching, they're just for binging, they're just for drama. And I went, the gays deserve something similar. So I basically took The Traitors, if you know that, and made it gay, where I tell so 10 gay men, 10 lesbians, put them in a house, tell them there's a secret straight, find them. And then the joke is they're all straight, and it's just torturing 20 straight people as like punishment for all the dating shows.
I was gonna say I know
Like
that
I think
was
what I say is
go
someone needs to be punished for all this shit, and I've gone Hunger Games.
Got Hunger Games with it. That's great. I was gonna say I know for me I saw that bit and I was just dying laughing the entire time you were going in detail with it, especially with like giving each other haircuts or whatnot, or like the way that it would end with like
Yeah.
the big reveal or whatnot.
Oh, so the funniest thing about this is some comments, which again, hate me all you want, engagement's engagement, are like accusing me of stealing it from like an old Tumblr post. But what's so
Oh,
funny is, so the thing is, the concept of is a very simple concept.
right.
Like you think of a gay dating show, you like it's the Traitors, it's Werewolf, it's Mafia, it's literally the games we played as children,
Yeah.
or The Mole, which is an early 2000s show,
Right,
which I think
right.
they're bringing back.
I was gonna say, wasn't
Um,
well, I was like, wasn't Anderson Cooper like the host of The Mole, or if I remember correctly, or
yeah, quite possibly. Yeah, which was the exact same concept, which is you're all fighting for a prize, but one of you wants to fuck you up.
right,
Find them, vote them out, and you win. Fucking Jubilee does it. Like it's the most simple concept for a show, and they're like you like I think one person put um these people owe us Tumblr kids an apology, and which is the most online thing I've ever seen in my life. Because like I was no listen, I was a young queer theater kid. Of course, I had a Tumblr, but I was
yes.
never like I didn't go to DashCon. Like I wasn't that into it. There were people who like lived there, and it was their only socialization in the world. And they are
Honestly,
still like really
if I was old enough, I would have paid to go to DashCon. Like in hindsight, just because of how chaotic and stupid it was after everything was said and done.
yeah. Like I think I've been going to conventions since I was like 12 years old.
Okay.
So I know I was an annoying little fandom person. But then I grew up. And I still go to conventions, I perform at conventions,
Mm-hmm.
but I think there is a split between people who grew up and people who kind of didn't. And I understand it's like a maladaptive coping mechanism for the horrors of the world, but for someone to take time out of the day and be like, this isn't because in comedy there's parallel thinking, which is two people coming up with the same joke.
Right.
Like a world event happens, people will come up with the same joke.
Right, I believe
Like
I think
there's
I've heard that
genuinely
theory before. I've heard of that before when it comes to especially with like different because there's so many comedians out there. Like it's not unreasonable for two people to come up with a very similar thought.
Yeah, like there's genuinely a comedy exercise where you write five jokes, and the first three you thought of you don't use because people
Oh,
already have done them.
okay,
Like it's
okay.
an accepted thing. But then like you stole this from Tumblr, and then I tried to track it down, and like it wasn't stolen. It was parallel thinking happening on the internet, where it was from Reddit. And then somebody else put it on Reddit, and they went, "This was a Reddit post 10 years ago." And then on that original post, they're like, "This was a Tumblr post 5 years ago." And then under that, they're like, "I think I heard this in a bar."
How far down the rabbit hole does it go? Next thing you're gonna tell me 15 years ago is on 4chan or whatnot.
Exactly. Yeah, this was on MySpace.
It
I
was
saw
on
this
my.
on Friendster and LimeWire. This was an MP3 on LimeWire in 1999.
God. Oh man, I feel old just hearing all that stuff again.
Yeah.
Oh shit! I like again just hearing like the oh man, like just thinking like I'm going back with like nostalgia of like all the different like obscure random websites that people would go on growing up or whatnot. Like I don't know if you ever encountered this. Have you ever encountered a website back in like the mid 2000s or whatnot, or like late early 2010s called Stumble Upon? Did you ever use that website?
No, I didn't.
Oh my goodness. It was a random website to where like you type in like an interest or whatnot that you have, and it would just send you to a random link somewhere among the internet just to see like, hey, here's something to broaden your insight or whatnot. Like in theory,
There were
that's
there were
sorry, go on.
there were websites I remember where you weren't necessarily like searching for things, but there'd be like related pages at the bottom, and you'd have to like go through a web like 6 degrees of separation.
Right? Like,
Where you just be clicking on like continuous links that were like flash links. So they're probably all broken now, which is like the worst web design. But you're like, oh my God, information on the internet superhighway.
the internet is
That's
such a
crazy.
the internet is such a fickle beast. I'm surprised it's been able to survive this long without like some major crash, you know? Uh
I mean, I don't think it'll crash, but I think we are like in late stage capitalism for the internet,
yeah.
where just every other thing is owned by Nazis.
Yeah, unfortunately. Unfortunately. But obviously, going back to the original, like the bit that you were talking about, I just die laughing every time I see that bit. The as you called it, queer baiting, or what? It's
Well, so this is a genuine show I've genuinely pitched to production companies.
oh, have you
It would
now?
be called, yeah, so it'd be called Straighters to the participants. The participants would think they're on the show Straighters,
Right.
as in straight traders. And then it would, in my ideal world, like the first episode, nobody, even the audience doesn't know who the straight person is.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get to the end where you get sort of the vox pops of them in the confessional going, and I'm the secret straight. And then it's everybody saying it in little boxes. And then it's me as the host going, they're all straight. Welcome to queer baiting.
Oh my god, that would be an incredible reveal. Like you're thinking it's actually one thing the entire time. Like that reveal.
Yeah,
Sounds
like
great.
I want even the audience to not know they're all straight until the end of the first episode.
That's you know what. Oh my
I
god.
want them to judge who's gay and who's straight. Like it's more a social experiment for everybody.
How have people not like how have companies not come to you and
It
be like
did
take our money?
there's been versions of this concept. So obviously there's the mole, there's the traitor.
Right.
And then when it comes to the gay straight thing, so there was a thing called playing it straight, where it was like the Bachelorette, but half the men were gay and half of them were straight. And if she picked a gay one, he got all the money. There was a show called Gay, Straight, or Taken, which was like one of those like logo. It was on Logo, so it was produced by the gays, but it was a straight woman, 3 men, one was gay, one was straight and single, and one was straight and single, and she had to find out of the 3 the straight single one, or the other one got the money.
I mean, hey, as long as someone gets paid in that scenario.
No, I know, but it was just like the same sort of concept of like, what does it mean to look gay or straight?
Exactly.
There was one really awful one where it was The Bachelor with some gay men, some straight men. And it was just like so fucked up because this gay guy just thought he was on a gay dating show.
Oh wow.
And then it was like, no, some of these are straight men.
I
And they're just here for the money.
I vaguely remember one. I think it was a Japanese dating show. I think I could be wrong in assuming this, but I remember there was one that was basically like The Bachelor, but then like they revealed at the very end that the woman that the men were fighting for was like trans, and so like the guy was given the opportunity to either like pick the money or like stay with the woman, and like he genuinely loved the woman and actually like took the woman instead of the money, which is so awesome to hear. Obviously.
Yeah, they did that. They did that in the States as well.
Okay.
What was her name? Yeah, like a very passing straight trans woman, and it didn't go well. It didn't end well
Unfortunate.
because then the this is like 2008.
Yeah.
I mean, you have that famous story of the daytime talk show host who they did like a thing of like, ooh, someone has a crush on me, and they had a man and a woman on stage, and then a man came in, thinking the woman had a crush on him, and then it turns out it was the guy who had a crush on him, and then like a week later, the straight guy shot the gay guy, like killed him.
What? I've never heard this story. What?
What's her name? What's her name? Daytime gay murder is what I'm googling. Jenny was the host.
That should be the
Like
name
it was
of
a
your,
lot. Obviously, it was a lot.
that should be the name of your
Yeah, the
next
Jenny
show.
Jones show.
Oh goodness.
The Jenny Jones show. So it was in the early 2000s when like daytime TV was just upping the ante, upping the ante.
Oh wow.
And a gay man was murdered
That.
because like the straight guy felt so. Yeah, 1995.
Oh goodness. Okay, so that was. Oh goodness. Wow. Wow, that is
Yeah, the Jenny
insane.
Jones show. Got a gay man murdered.
I'm so glad that we have advanced so far as a society to where that is insane to obviously think about. I mean, obviously back then killing someone period is insane, but like thank God we don't have that drastic of responses to something like that, you know?
Yeah, gay panic is no longer a legal defense that you can use.
Exactly. Goodness. I was gonna say so the straighter or queer baiting, that was a hilarious story and a hilarious concept. Another story or bit that I absolutely love from you, like an actual story that you have, is your rendition of how your school decided to do Hairspray and how everything went down with that.
Yeah.
That is an insane story how that went down.
Yeah, I was home in New York. So I was actually talking with a friend of mine who I went to high school with, and we were in that show together. And I was
Oh.
telling some new people about it, and she actually corrected me. So apparently, they gave the girl playing Motormouth Maybelle. So I'll just recap the story. Basically, we were doing Hairspray with basically an all-white school. We had a few black people. One of them was Motormouth Maybelle. She was great, mean to me, but could sing,
Mm-hmm.
and I love that for her. It came out in a custody court hearing that her mother lied about her address to get her into our school because we were better funded. And then, like, literally during Tech Week, it all came out. So her life was hell. And I thought they pulled her from the show. Apparently they gave her the option to finish the show and then leave. But like she was like a 16-year-old whose parents were fighting in public, like she was being ripped from her school. She was like, I'm actually not in a place to do this. And I think that's actually fair enough.
Yeah, honestly, that's valid given like you're talking about earlier with like how you kind of come up with bits or whatnot. A very horrible situation to kind of be in the first place, like that. But like still, just hearing that story and how it more or less like all went down, that it's just insane. But then like I think what makes it funny is you adding a little bit in the end of like like the story of Hairspray.
Oh yeah, no, like we that's the thing though. I feel like because a bunch of the comments on that video were also like, yeah, we did in the Heights, also known as in the Whites, because we just had like no black people, no Spanish people. It was just all white schools doing musicals and shows that they've no business doing.
Right.
And just because it's like fun, not because they care about the message.
I mean,
so like we did like Hairspray because we had a Tracy, not because we like valued diversity in our school.
right. I mean, you gotta celebrate what little bit there is, but it's not saying much. Still, like it's like seeing some of these stories and some of these bits that you've more or less like come up with, and like just your delivery of them more than anything else, I absolutely love. Like I can only imagine for you how both elating, but also like how more how elating it is for you to be able to tell bits like these, and especially to see like the audience reaction. Like I can only imagine like having someone laugh at something as insane as a custody battle must be weirdly like elating for you.
Oh yeah, like I was saying earlier, you feel like a god. Um, like there's something about like true laughter that is an involuntary response. And I think there is a weird power trip, and like I made someone do something against their will, even if it's joy. Like with any performance, like you don't want the audience to want to cry. You want them to not want to cry and to cry anyway for a dramatic performance. It's the same with like really dark comedy, and it's like exposing people to themselves.
It's like you
like
want
I also have a bit about. Yep.
I was gonna say it's like you want them to cry, but you just want them to cry at the right moment, not while you're in the middle of performing, because that's distracting.
Yeah, so like I have another bit about The Sims, and the best part of that bit is everyone who played The Sims was an absolute monster.
Yes.
You give someone the power of a god over digital people that they have no consequence of torturing, they will. And like I just mentioned, like in the bit I just mentioned the pool thing that everyone did, which is you remove the ladder and watch them drown. People have like commented and come up to me in person and revealed the darkest things possible of what they would do in The Sims. The amount of people who were like, whenever I got in a fight with my mom, I'd make her and kill her.
Good Lord, what?
Right? And I'm like, wow. I'm very well adjusted, it turns out. My evil was nothing compared to what you got. Like, so many people were like, I'd kidnap my neighbors and make them paint in the basement to make me money. And I'm like, there was a whole cheat code for money. You didn't need to have painting slaves. You didn't need to make slavery. You didn't need to bring slavery to Pleasantville.
Like, the most depressing thing that happened to me in The Sims was there was one time I had like this house, and then all of a sudden, like, a random depressed clown just came into the house uninvited and then started a fire and accidentally killed the person living in that house. Like, that was the most depressing thing that happened to me in The Sims. And there are some people that's just like, you need therapy.
No, the saddest ones are people who are like, my family was awful, so I'd make a family and just have them be happy.
Oh.
Right? I'm just like, oh God.
Oh, that kills me.
I guess I'm glad that was there for you, but damn.
I mean, if it helped them cope at the end of the day, I guess that's good for something. That's better than my mom and I got in an argument, so I, drowned her in the pool like you were recommending.
Oh no, there's like mods and shit. People, like, because Monsters made mods where you can do horrible, horrible things to The Sims. So they would just get really dark. And I was like, yeah, I just took away the ladder.
Yeah, you just took away. It's so simple. Oh, goodness. Like, I could only imagine, like, hearing obviously, like, the fan interaction that you've had with bits like that, for better or for worse. I can only imagine how insane it must be for you, especially to have this more or less like elevated platform that you have to tell these kind of bits and tell these kind of stories. Like, it has to be insane and surreal to be able to tell like these stories and these bits and to have like a really cool audience, like have it reach them and have them, relate or laugh along with you.
I think it's so weird because the internet doesn't feel real.
It does not. No.
Like I can have a video go viral. Like I got the Sims bit on TikTok is about to hit 1 million views.
Good shit.
And I've had people recognize me from the videos, and I'm like, that's not real. Oh no, it was happening in real life. You're a real human.
I was gonna say, it just reminded me. So it's funny you were talking about conventions and how you've been to them and stuff. I recently went to my first convention a couple weeks back. It was MomoCon in Atlanta, and while I was there, I have a very small media presence. I have a very small internet presence. It's not tiny and insignificant, but it's there. But like, for the first time in public, I ever got recognized just simply because I hosted the podcast. Like, which was insane to me because it's like, oh my God, you're actually someone that watches the podcast and recognized me because I host the podcast. Because I was just at some like random booth, like getting something. I walked out and there's a person that's like, excuse me, are you the person that hosts the Postmodern Art podcast? And like, I'm like, oh, that's insane. So I imagine for you, especially with how much more of a platform do you have, I can only imagine how insane it has to be whenever people, like, even in the streets are like, oh yeah, you're the one that did the funny JK Rowling bit, and you have to just be like, hold on, what, huh?
Yeah, I think it's a different mindset. Like when you come off stage, you are so ready to receive a compliment.
Right.
You are so thirsty for somebody who was in that crowd to say, well done, I really enjoyed that. In your day-to-day life, you're not.
Right.
Like that, there's this thing of when you're on as a performer and when you're off. And I think it sort of snaps you into a different gear when someone's recognized you as a performer. Because then there is that thing of like, even if I'm in a bad mood, like you're being so generous in giving me a compliment, I can't be a dick to you. Like, I think that's why you hear of some celebrities when they're like not accosted, but when someone comes up to them in person, they seem standoffish. It's because I think people don't realize it's a different mask that you're wearing.
Yeah.
And you need a second to put that mask on.
it's like they have to quickly like turn that switch in their head of just being like, I'm just being myself. Oh wait, this person recognizes me for something. Hi, how's it going?
Yeah, I have to be a performer. And they're weird enough, when you get to a certain level of notoriety, there are tricks they teach you.
Oh.
I say they, the ominous they. But if you ever notice, celebrities will often, um, it's good to say like hi, like I say hi, I'm Dian, because it's awful to just assume they know who you are. But also, if you immediately ask questions about the person who's come up to you, because it makes them feel like heard and listened to and like you care. And also, it takes the need to perform off, because now you just need to listen.
Right. Right. Like I. It's interesting to like, especially having that kind of mentality more or less, or like having that switch, like just really getting into that proper mindset at the right moment. Like I especially for you, like you're saying, now that you're getting to that point where people are actually recognizing you outside of your I guess your comfort zone when it comes to being on that stage or whatnot. Like learning how to just simply be like having that switch or whatnot is it must be a learning experience, I guess, is the what I'm trying to get at.
I think some people can deal with it, some people can't. Like if you watch Bo Burnham,
Mm-hmm.
um, because even he says he's such a different person off stage that when those two worlds collided, it made him unable to perform.
Okay.
Like he says he stopped performing because he kept having panic attacks before going on stage because those two identities were clashing too much.
Well, if that's the case,
Because a lot of comedians are actually very, very shy people.
mm,
Like they're not, like if you met them outside of performing, you wouldn't think they were a performer. But it's because those two parts are so divided.
honestly, that kind of makes sense. I mean, because everyone has kind of their own different way of using the stage to like help cope and like help entertain. And like for some people, like you were kind of talking about here and there, whatnot, when they're on stage, they're a completely different person, or at least something they're putting on a different mask. So like, being off stage, like being that shy person or whatnot, it I can understand how those identities can easily clash.
Yeah. And I think I'm handling it all right now, but I also specifically moved to like a lesser known seaside UK town. Um so that if I need to disappear for a week, I can. Like having lived in New York and living in London for a few years, especially as a performer, there's such a pressure to always be on.
Right.
Either always be performing, to be moving on to the next thing. Like I did Edinburgh Fringe where I did 54 shows in a month.
Good. Yeah.
And I came back and people who knew I'd done those shows then said, "So what are you doing next?" There
Oh.
was no room for a break. There was no room to breathe.
Yeah, after you're doing again 54 shows in a month, which I've heard about that the Edinburgh, uh, the festivals that do that kind of stuff. Goodness, like going from that and then people just being like, okay, so what do you got next for us? That's daunting.
Oh no, it's even worse because it's not even next for us because people asking aren't coming to the show.
Oh yeah.
Like these are just your friends who didn't even bother to come to the first show. Like, so what are you doing now? And I'm like, why do you care?
It's like, are you
Like,
gonna be
oh,
there?
something that happened this year, which is really dark, which is like as an artist and as a performer, you sort of have to realize who supports you as an artist and who doesn't,
Right.
which is fine. But I think it does change relationships. So like there are friends who I now don't tell when I'm performing because I'm like, you've missed so many shows, it's not worth telling you.
Oh, yeah. You know what? I can understand that. I get that more or less mentality of like, yeah, you're not gonna be there. So I mean, like if you show up, you show up. I know you're not. Love you, bud, but nah.
Yeah, like I think especially if you're self-producing shows, you get ticket reports with everyone's name on it.
Oh,
So like
okay.
an hour before a show, sometimes you'll get a bunch of texts being like, "So sorry, I can't be there tonight." I'm like, "Yeah, you didn't buy a ticket. I know you didn't. I wasn't expecting you."
Okay. Honestly, this conversation has opened my eyes a lot to how certain stand-up situations work. I now feel a lot more self. No, I'm joking. But it's really insane to see, like, obviously how much you've been able to grow. But I can only imagine, like, how surreal it must be for you to be in the position that you are right now. Like, thinking back to, obviously, like, when you were first even thinking about storytelling in the first place with the tragic 9/11 story, honestly, to where you
Yeah.
are, to where you are right now, being able to tell these incredible stories, have some fun bits, and being able to have this incredible presence. Like, I can only imagine how surreal and amazing you must be with your art journey so far.
Yeah, it's this weird thing where like I have to write accomplishments down because I'm very much somebody who I don't feel necessarily joy when things happen that I've been dreaming of
Mm-hmm.
because I've been working for them so long. It feels like I've just taken a step. You know what I mean? Like it's a satisfaction, but like I got nominated. Like my last show got nominated for awards, and like performing at Comic-Con was a childhood dream of mine.
Hell yeah.
But by the time I got there, I was like, yeah, the thing I made happen happened. Like, I'm not shocked I'm here because I sent the fucking email.
Yeah.
I'm the one who booked it.
It's
It wasn't handed to me. I didn't wake up to an email saying, by the way, here's your dreams come true. It was me grinding and going, no, I'm gonna do it. And then I did it.
it's I guess it must be more or less that satisfaction of just being like, I earned this. Not just I got to do this, I earned this.
Yeah. There was a really funny thing before we sort of wrap up. Doing Comic-Con, so London Comic-Con, they separate the little influencers like me from the famous people. In Birmingham for MCM, they don't.
Okay.
So I was dressed as Ash Ketchum, and I went into the green room with all of your favorite voice actors.
Oh, okay.
The Ruby girls were there, so like Rooster Teeth Ruby girls were there. Every voice actor they had at Birmingham last year, and nobody knew who I was because I wasn't. They didn't know me as a voice actor. They all knew each other,
Mm-hmm.
and nobody had the guts to ask me who I was. But they all thought I was a fan who snuck in.
Yeah, because you're dressed up as Ash Ketchum.
I'm in cosplay. I walk in. Security's nice to me because I'm nice to security, and they just like they kept letting me go in and out, and they were like, "Why are you allowed in here?" And I'm like, "I'm having the free coffee and the free food. You leave me alone. I have an hour-long show to do."
Oh goodness, but I mean, like, the fact that you still got to do opportunities like that, I mean, it's insane. I also want to ask this question real quickly because I forgot to ask this a little sooner when it comes to like your bits or whatnot. I'm gonna steal a line from another podcast, Good Ones. Yeah, good one.
Mhm.
Is there a bit that you personally think is absolutely funny? That is one of your favorite bits, but every single time you perform it, the audience just doesn't react the way that you want to. Like, what? Like, is there a bit that you think every single time this is hilarious? I don't care what anybody thinks, it works.
Yes, but you might have to cut it out because it's just too dark.
If
Is what it is.
if I need
So
to, I will go ahead and preemptively do this to make sure I need to do the editing if need be. But let's hear it.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm just popping in real quickly. Just wanted to let you guys know that personally, I did not think that the joke was worth cutting, but I'm at least giving you guys this disclaimer that it's a fairly dark joke. I don't think it's too bad to cut, but I at least wanted to leave this little disclaimer. If you want to skip ahead, a minute or so, I don't blame you guys, but I think it's a pretty funny joke. That's why I'm leaving it in.
I have a bit that I think is incredible. It's intelligent and it's a poignant thought. Basically, whenever I talk about like immigration reform or like when people shit on the UK and the US
Okay.
and like say we're racist for our immigration policies, I think that's unfair. I think strict immigration policies has done a lot for humanity. Like, if it wasn't for the UK and US being specific on who they let into the country, we wouldn't have masterpieces like The Diary of Anne Frank. And how else would 12-year-olds learn about how bad the Holocaust was?
No, I'm not cutting that out. That is hilarious.
The Franks applied for asylum in the UK and the US and were turned away.
Oh my god. No, I'm not cutting that. That is like it's dark, but it's hilarious.
Yeah, it takes a second.
It takes a second for yours. Oh, dear God. Oh, that is great. Maybe it's just the kind of audience that you're telling it to, because I'm sure if you told it to like a more American audience, maybe it'll click with them a little better.
Well, that's what's genuinely hilarious is because obviously being in New York, there's a lot of Jewish comedy. There's such Jewish culture embedded into New York City,
Right.
that and in the UK, not a thing, because they were a very anti-Semitic nation that did not want Jewish people during World War II. Like, they didn't go to war to save the Jews. They went to war because the Blitz happened.
Yep.
There's not like a huge love for the Jewish community in the UK. Like, they're here, but it's not part of the culture. Meanwhile, growing up in New York, you grow up learning a bit of Yiddish.
Yep.
You can be anti-Semitic, I guess, but you can't really be a New Yorker and be an out anti-Semite. So like in New York City, there was a situation last year where there were the Jew tunnels. You remember the Jew tunnels?
I remember faintly hearing about stuff like that. Yeah.
There was a synagogue that dug tunnels under New York City streets, and then were found out. And, like, their neighbor knew about it, because there was this guy tweeting for months, I hear Jews under my floor, and I live on the ground floor, and there's no basement. I think, like, he thought he was schizophrenic. Oh. This man was like, I hear Yiddish in the middle of the night. They're chanting. What is happening? And then it cuts to, there's tunnels. We still don't know why they dug them. We still don't know who necessarily dug them, because they're all pointing fingers at each other within that one synagogue of who really dug them. But you look at it, and all of New York, nobody was angry about the tunnels. It was the funniest thing that ever happened, because they cut like a hole in a grate to access the tunnels, and it was in the shape of the hat that Hasidic Jew men wear.
Oh.
You have no idea how fucking funny that is.
That is insanely, like, I guess ironic would be the proper term for that. I don't know.
One person could go in and out at a time, and like the city came down on them. I'm like, get out of there, or we're gonna fill it with cement because you've like damaged the integrity of an entire city block.
Yeah,
like this could come down on you. Get out. And then like the politics of it came out, where like the younger generation of Jewish men were like, the old rabbi was the Messiah, but then he died, so they don't recognize the authority of their new leader. Like, it was a fucking Game of Thrones-esque drama.
Oh my God.
And everyone in New York, when a group of people dug tunnels under the city, of course it was the Hasidim. Of course it was them. Yes! And nobody was mad. We were just fascinated and found it hilarious.
Like you said, it was like Game of Thrones. We're just wondering what's going to happen next. How much more bizarre can this story go?
And here's the thing. We don't know anything since that day. They pulled out a dirty mattress. They didn't get any, like, nobody was arrested. Nobody knows what that tunnel was for. To this day.
Oh my God, that... Oh, shit.
I don't want to leave on that note necessarily.
Well, no,
I might have to head out.
Oh shit! I was gonna. Okay, well, okay. I mean, that's a weird note. Okay, it is a weird note to end on, but I understand you got.
No, ask another question. Ask another question quickly, and then you can.
Okay. The last question I usually end the podcast with on that one is, obviously you grew up with art in one form or another. You know, storytelling is a major art form for you, and it's kind of a way yet to you know, translate yourself throughout all this time. How important is art, not just for you, but for the world as a whole?
It is one of the things that defines humanity. I think there's an interesting thing of the two things that define humans from other animals is our ability for storytelling and our ability for cruelty.
Okay.
And I think it's two sides of the same coin. Storytelling is how we remember our own history. It's how we define our culture. We are defined by the stories we tell. History is storytelling. Like, the histories that were written were just stories that mostly white men wrote. And I think it's one of the things that, not to bring the Holocaust back up, but like whenever you try to eradicate a people, that's how you eradicate them. Is especially like every regime tries to get rid of the language first because the language is so intrinsic to how you tell the story of your people that every fascist regime knows if you kill the language, you kill the culture.
Right.
You take away their ability to tell their stories, to define themselves. You see it with Native Americans, where you had the boarding schools where you were hit for speaking your language because they didn't want them to know their history. They didn't want them to be able to identify one another. Happened with the Irish. You couldn't speak Irish in school. You were hit with a stick. Like in Irish schools, if they caught you speaking Irish under British rule, they put a notch in the stick. And every day, however many notches were put in the stick, that's how many times you got hit.
Oof.
You see it with there's the African tablets. I forget which nation it is, but basically they had the story of their people told through tablets in a very specific order. The British came in, stole the tablets, mixed them all up. So now literally the stories of those people are lost forever.
Good.
So that's what I think the value of stories are.
I think that is a wonderful way to word it, if I do say so myself. Um, that is
Oh,
all the
thank you.
that is all the questions I have for you. Real quickly, I've already showered you with a whole bunch of praise, but I want to shower you with a little bit more because it's my podcast. I do what I want.
Yep.
Now, Dean, like I said, ever since I first got a chance to get to be familiar with your stuff with that JK Rowling bit, I've just been deep diving into yourself and just absolutely loving how you're able to present, how you're able to tell a story, how you're able to get the laugh. Because you tell some of the most hilarious stories and some of the best well thought out scenarios, and I cannot get enough of it. I appreciate the fact that you're able to put yourself out there, especially in the scenario that you're in, and being a trans person in the UK, regardless, like all of that even aside, like you're just a fantastic person and a wonderful storyteller, and I appreciate you putting yourself out there, telling these incredible bits, and it just makes me excited the next time you post a video or next time you have like a bit. If I ever get the opportunity to go to the UK myself, I definitely want to be there for one of your sets. I definitely want to take the time to like see you like in your element, like just having a good time, because I can tell you're having an absolute blast with it and you're doing a fantastic job with what you're doing. Keep up the incredible work, because I feel like it's definitely needed at the end of the day. Thank you for what you do. Keep up the awesome work. I'll be rooting for you every single step of the way.
Well, thank you so much.
Absolutely. And people want to know
Thank you so much.
what?
It's been amazing. Thank you.
No, I'll say thank you. And I was like, if people want to figure out where exactly they could find the stuff that I've been gushing about the entire time, go ahead and quickly plug your stuff for the people at home.
So you can find me on social media at Dian Cathal, so DianCathal on most social media, except TikTok, which is Dian Cathal Comedy, because the original one got shadow banned
Oh, that sucks.
by TikTok. I don't know if it was transphobes or they didn't like my cursing, but they shadow banned me, and the new one did better.
Well,
So now we're on Dian Cathal Comedy on TikTok.
fair enough. Do you have any final words before we head out?
Save the arts. Everyone wants to destroy it. Don't let them.
Absolutely. And with that, all I've left to say is for the people at home, if you can, pay your artists.
Yep.
Thank you so much for sticking around to the end. If this is your first time listening, I greatly do appreciate it. Like I said in the intro, Dean was someone that I absolutely just could not get enough of once I saw that JK Rowling bit. And Dean, if you've gotten up to this point, thank you sincerely for your time more than anything else. It was an absolute treat and a pleasure to get a chance to talk to you. getting to see amazing people, especially in the LGBTQ plus community, just be as awesome as Dian is, but like, especially with how confident he appears to be more than anything else. Because stand-up comedy is no easy feat, people. That's why there are very few that get like that big name status. But regardless, like, Dian is just someone that just comes across as like really cool, at least to me. So this conversation was a pleasure, and it's why I'm more than happy to give the stage to incredible people such as Dian wherever I can. There are some incredible people in this community, whether it's the LGBT community, the comedy community, the artist community, whatever community you want to look at. There are some incredible people that do not get enough love and attention. And I know Dian got his little moment in the spotlight with the JK Rowling bit, but there are so many more good bits past that. There really is. Nothing against the Rowling bit. Obviously, it was warranted and it was amazing. But if you guys, like, I'm not joking when I say if you have not taken the opportunity to go through his TikTok or go through on Twitter and just see some of the cool bits that he's been able to perfect for a while, like, it's absolutely hilarious and it's absolutely worth your time. And it's people like Dian that makes me excited for this podcast sometimes. I get to meet people like him. I get to chat with some cool people from all different walks of life. This episode was more for me, I'll be honest with y'all. Like, every single episode's for me. But this one was really one that I was really glad to have. And I sincerely hope you guys enjoyed the conversation we had and are more than willing to support Dian, because the dude deserves it. He deserves it. Just like you all deserve all the love and support you can give for all the incredible work that you guys put out there for your love and your craft. Keep up that incredible work. Be one of the incredible people in your community. And just have a good day. And happy Pride.